We're learning the second Sikha of Parshas Nitzavim in Chelek Yutes on page 266. Beim Krisis Bris Bereish Parshasenu werd gesagt im Posik. So in the beginning of this week's Parsha, it speaks about the bris that the Eibishter makes with Yidden, and the Posik says as follows: V'loi itchem levatchem anoichi kairis es abris hazois v'es ha'ola hazois ki es asher yeshne poy imano emedayem lefnei havayla kecha v'es asher enenu poy imano ayem. The bris that the Eibishter makes with Yidden is with both those that are here today with us and those that are not here today. Stellt sich Rashi of the Werter v'es asher enenu poy. So Rashi stops on these words v'es asher enenu poy and is mefarish and explains as follows: Va'af im deires ha'asidim liyes. The bris the Eibishter made is also with the generations that are coming in the future. Learn the Mefarshim. So the Mefarshim say, as Rashi bavaran termit, that Rashi comes to answer bezon the teitchen, that one should not say that the pshat as a nenu poi meint die Yidden von jenem doir wir sind dort nit gewen bei isem maimed, that a nenu poi means those Yidden that are not there at that time. Und azoi kemme doch nicht lernen, and you can't interpret the pasuk this way. Vanem es steht doch frier atem nitzavim ayoim kulchem kol ish Yisrael, as alle Yidden haben sich gefunden bei Samaimed. Every single one of the Yidden alive at that time was there at that time period, at that place when Moshe Rabbeinu was speaking to the Yidden. So you can't say that as asher einenu poi means those Yidden that were not present when Moshe Rabbeinu was speaking to them. The Rebbe sagt Rashi. So therefore Rashi says, what does vas asher einenu poi mean? As vas asher einenu poi mean, the deiris or asidim liyes. It refers to the generations that are going to be. But those that were alive then, they were all present. Das is aber nicht maspek. However, this pshat the Mefarshim say is not sufficient. Vibal, the pasuk allein sagt klar. This is something that the pasuk itself says. Atem nitzavim ayoim kulchem. That today, all of you, all Yidden are standing here. Versteht man doch allein euch anpirish Rashi as a nanopoi gate of the kommende gedeiris. So it's self-understood that a nanopoi does not refer to some of the Yidden alive then that were not present. It has to be referring to Yidden of the future generations. Heint Wasser Rashi mechadish mit sein pirish deiris ha'asidim liyes. So what's the chiddush of Rashi to tell me that the pasuk is referring to the generations that are going to be in the future? The Rebbe is an Mefarshim Meisiv, therefore the Mefarshim, the Ra'am, adds another point here. Lule Pirish Rashi, without Rashi, wollt gewen schwer lernen, as mit einenu poi werd gemeint, is später de gedeiris. It would be difficult to say that einenu poi refers to future generations. Warum wie is shayach lichreis bris im aheder? How could you make a bris, a covenant, with someone which does not exist yet? He's going to be born at a later generation. The Rebbe, darf Rashi sagen, v'af im deiris ha'asidim liyes. Therefore Rashi has to clarify that this is the pshat. Was the mitte ze mechadish, as is yeshayach zu kairis brisayim mit zei, that it is possible to make a bris with the future generations. Why? Weil, and the reason is, Aleph, zeir neshamis, zenen damot gewen, mit zei is gewen the krisis bris. Even if their bodies are not alive in this world at that time, but their neshamis are here, and the bris is with the neshamis. Beis hayis as bra kare davua. Since, as it says, a generation, a child that's born later, he is a continuation, he's an extension of a limb of the parent. The far werden euch die banim nichlal in dem krisis bris mit zeir avis. So therefore, the children are included in the bris that is made with their fathers, with their grandfathers, because ultimately, all the future generations are all an extension of those that are alive today. Es ist aber nicht verstandig. However, this pshat and Rashi has the following questions, and the Rebbe has many questions here. Alle vigeret kama pom. As we said many times, that Rashi geschrieben sein Pirish ba'ifem kazeh. Rashi wrote his Pirish on Chumash in such a way as euch haben Chumash lemikra soll von seine Werte können verstehen dem pshat vom pasuk. A child, a 5-year-old reading the Rashi could understand what the pasuk is saying. Wir darfen dich ankommen zu dem, was Mefarshim sind in Masber and Meisif, without looking into other Mefarshim to see what Rashi really means to say. Rashi makes his intention very clear. Well, if he says kosher b'nidin didan, so if so, in this Rashi it's difficult to understand. Der Bechamish hat wegen der Mien von Bra Kare da Avur nicht gelernt in keine von der Friedeke Sedres. In any of the other seders of the Torah, the Ben Chomish never heard of this concept that a child is considered to be not just a child, but an extension, like a limb of the father. Weiß euch nicht, sie die Neshamas von die Deires HaSidim seine gewähnt beim Bris oder nicht. He also doesn't know of this concept whether the Neshamas of other generations are present here at this time or not. Is Rashi is Eisen. So if Rashi here is coming to be Machadish, to let me know, as euch mit die noch nicht geborene Deires kämen keines Bris sein, that you could make a bris, even with those that are not physically present. Hat gedacht, Eisteitschen befeirisch, wie sei das möglich? If that's the main point Rashi is coming to explain, so Rashi should come and explain, how is that possible? Tzimitzad mitzias haneshamas, whether it is because the neshamas are here, or the mitzad b'rakar davua, or the reason is because the child is an extension of the parents which are present. So Rashi doesn't explain this, how this is possible. He can't expect a child, a 5-year-old, reading the simple words of the Rashi to understand this on his own. The kasha is noch starker, this question is even stronger. The minion, as a nanopoi, gate of Deiris HaSidim Liyos, this, the pshat, the taich of the pasuk, that a nanopoi refers to future generations, versteht the Talmud allein. That, the meaning of the pshat of the words, reading it, you know that that's what it must mean. The fund, was im pasuk steht, frir atem Nitzavim kolchem, kanal. Since it already says that all Yidden alive were present, so therefore you know that when it says Einenu Pai, it refers to future generations. Und was Rashi is machadish zu bavaranen, so as we said before, the Pshat and Mefarshim say, the only chiddush of Rashi that he has to clarify, nit as Einenu Pai gate of the Deiris HaSidim Liyos, is not coming to tell you the fact that it refers to those generations, nor v'yazoi kemen koiris b'rizayim mit Deiris HaSidim. The only thing Rashi is coming to explain, how is this even possible? How is it possible to make a bris with future generations? Of them is a filikin remez nida in seine Werte, v'af im Deiris HaSidim Liyos. And in the words of Rashi, he's only coming to explain how this is possible, and in these words that he actually writes, there's no hint of how it's actually possible. The main point that Rashi is coming to explain is missing. The fact that it refers to the future generations, that is self-understood. And that's what Rashi seems to be saying, not more than that. How this is possible, which according to the Pshat of the Mefarshim is what Rashi is coming to explain, he doesn't hint to anything at all. Gimel, another question here is, dem Inyan from Krisis Bris, mit Spete de Gedeiris. This concept, that you could have a bris with future generations that are not here yet, is a zach was begefind ke'einze in the friedige sedres. We find similar to this in earlier sedres. The bris ben Absarim is given in shayches zu Zare shel Avram. The bris that the Eibishter makes with Avram Avinu by the bris ben Absarim is in connection with his descendants. Was wollen sein kamet deire später, which will live many generations later. Al derech zeh zayich in Parshas B'chol Kaisai. Also in Parshas B'chol Kaisai, the things that it says there refers to the future generations. Und euch Reif von die Mitzvahs, was der Eibishter hat angesagt durch Moshe Rabbeinu, seinen Mitzvahs schon jetzt davole Deiris. Most of the Mitzvahs that the Eibishter tells Moshe Rabbeinu, the Yidden being in the Midbar couldn't fulfill them. He's speaking to them, but really he's not speaking to them. He's speaking to the future generations that are commanded and are going to fulfill these Mitzvahs. Hat man doch lefi zeh euch dort gedacht fragen. So if so, there the question should have been asked. Wie is Shayach as the Krisis Bris mit Avram? Oder that Tzivya Mitzvahs durch Moshe Rabbeinu soll chal sein of the Yidden von die kommende Gedeiris v'chayetze bezeh. So how is there a bris that the Eibishter makes with Avram Avinu, which is for the descendants of Avram, and Moshe Rabbeinu is commanding mitzvahs that are for future generations if they're not even present? Und von deswegen sagt man, and nevertheless we see, as in the alle Erte, ba'avonet nit Rashi, the Shaila anal, Rashi doesn't answer that question. The question now is, so why suddenly here, when the Torah says, so Rashi has to explain how it's possible to make a bris with future generations. In Gemara state, in the Gemara it says, as Vesasharinenu meant Deiris Habayim, it refers to the future generations, and the Gemara adds it also refers to the Gedim that are going to that will convert in future generations. On euch bepashtus, lefi pshute shel mikra, zenen gedim bechlal bris. As you see in the pshat of the pasuk, the gedim are part of this bris as well. Punkt, wie sie zenen in klal von allen jene Teire mitzvahs, just like they're included in all matters of Teire mitzvahs. Und wie steht in Anfang Parsha benegei jenem Deir, as it clearly says regarding that generation, that v'gercha shebekerev machanecha la'avrecha bevris geimer, that the gedim of that generation are included in the bris as well. It's Leute now not verstandig. So if so, according to what we said, it's not understood. Benegei gedim is doch nicht shaykh the tam from brok kare davua. Regarding gedim, you can't say the reasoning that the children that are descendants from their father are like an extension, like a limb of the father, and therefore it's like they're present. They're not descendants. They're not children of those that are alive. They're gedim. It says euch nicht shaykh. B'derech hapshat. Der Tam, as they in the Neshama is then given base krisis habris, in derech hapshat, you also can't say the other pshat, that the reason that the future generations are included is because their neshamas are present, while ba ben chomish lemikra leiktzachop, because a child learning this would simply understand, as b'shas the ger is ich megayer, ba kumta demult anaya neshama. From the moment that he becomes a ger, he receives then a new neshama. But before that, he didn't have the neshama. So you can't say that his neshama was present. It didn't exist before. He gets a new neshama later. Bleibt the shaila. So if so, the question remains: hat men keiris bris gewen mit geirem hoasidim lias. So how is this? What does the Gemara mean here? That there's a bris with future generations and also with geirim. How could you make a bris with geirim that don't exist at all? And there's no way to explain of how the bris is with them now. Hey, another question. Le'idoch. On the other hand, the question here is: Vibalt as bepashtus is the seichel machayev as the krisis bris is given oich mit the geiris hasidim liyos. Since it's self-understood that the bris that's being made with future generations includes the geirim as well, which are included in everything of Torah and mitzvahs. Is favazak Rashi nor geiris hasidim liyos. So why does Rashi only use this expression of geiris hasidim liyos, future generations? That's it. Und es mishane ma Gemara durch mash mit sein Gedim. And Rashi changes of the language of the Gemara and he drops the Gedim. He doesn't mention Gedim. Or befrat, as benegei Gedim is a aggressor chiddush. As we said before, Gedim, you can't say that. Rashi says Gedim asidim liyos and Gedim would be self-understood. No, Gedim is a much bigger chiddush. Wie bald bei sei sind nidod die zwei Time manal. Regarding Gedim, you don't have these two reasons of explaining how it's possible to include them in the bris. So why does Rashi not explain that? Vov der Pirish as esashareinenu poi meint deiris hasidim liyos. This pshat that it refers to future generations is do in Tanchuma. It tells also here in the Tanchuma mit denselben Loshen deiris hasidim lovai, generations that are going to come. Aber in Gemara Bavli Yerushalmi steht b'shinui Loshen, in both in the Bavli and Yerushalmi it says with a different expression deiris habayim, the generations coming. A shorter version. So not daf and verstehen, the question is, Hagam, as Rashi's Pirish is Muchach from Pshuta Shel Mikra, nit from Maimah Chazal. When Rashi says this pshat, he's not just simply quoting a Maimah Chazal, but he's saying it because it's clear from the pasuk. Chayetze bezeh. Wie bald aber sagt demselben Teichen, versteht in Drashes Razal. But since Rashi is quoting based on what you see from the pasuk, the same content of what there is in Chazal, wird lechoire mehr Masken gewen, als soll sich benutzen mit dem kurzen Loschen haboim. Wouldn't it be more fitting that Rashi should use the shortest expression, haboim? That's the most direct. The generations coming. Was steht in Shas Babel in Yerushalmi? Nit mit dem Loschen deiris ha-asidim von Tanchuma, and not the expression of deiris ha-asidim liyos that it says in Tanchuma. Ubefrat, as haboim is oich a Loschen was is mehr rogel vi ha-asidim liyos. The expression of haboim, future generations that are coming, is more of a common way to refer to it than saying ha-asidim liyos, those that are going to be. It's not the usual expression. On Alpia Yedua, Goydel Adiyek von Lashon Pirish Rashi, even though this may seem like a very small and minimal difference, but it's known of how precise Rashi's language is. Biz Sizdon de Minyonim Mufloim. If you look deeply in the words of Rashi, you find wondrous things. Is Zicher, as das was Rashi schreibt, Deires ha-asidim, und nit Deires ha-boim, Koloshon ha-shas, is bechavane o bolalamed. It's with a purpose, there's a reason, and it's teaching you something. Zayin, the final question that Rabbi asks here on this Rashi, der Chiddush bepirish Rashi is doch blois in dem Abteich von die Wörter einenu poi. The Chiddush of Rashi is regarding what the meaning of einenu poi is, that it means Deires Hasidim Lias, the future generations. Tafavos is Rashi meitig from Pasik, euch die Friede Gewärter ve'es Asher. So why is Rashi quoting from the Pasuk also the two words ve'es Asher that he doesn't add anything to? Und nicht nur as meitig die Wörter. It's not only that he quotes those two words ve'es Asher, nor fataych zei euch bepirushay. He also interprets their meaning in his pirish. Va'af im. Va'af im is referring to those also with, that's the ve'es Asher. Was l'chayre, the mit is a garnet machadashe from Pasuk. By interpreting va'af im ha'deiris hasidim liyos, he doesn't add anything to the pshat of the Pasuk. So that's the questions here. So B'kitzur, the Rebbe, as you see, is pointing out to us that it's very difficult to learn like the Mefarshim, that Rashi is coming to explain how it's possible to make a bris with future generations. Rashi doesn't even explain that how. He doesn't hint to it. In other places where that question comes up, he never addressed it, which means it doesn't bother Rashi. Rashi, all he says is, V'af im deiris hasidim liyos. So what is Rashi saying? What is he being machadish? The fact that this bris is with future generations is obvious from the pasuk where it says kulchem, that all those alive were present. So what is this Rashi coming to say? So the explanation in all of this is as follows. Rashi darf nicht bewahrnen, wie soll man ken machen a krisis bris mit die deiris hasidim liyos. Rashi does not have to explain how it is possible to make a bris with the future generations. Well, das is muvamatzme. That's something which is self-understood. Der krisis bris hat gemacht der Eibishter. Who's making this bris? The Eibishter is. Kumufurish bekosov, asher avaya lekecha kairis imchayim. The Eibishter is making the bris with you today. Und jeder versteht, so everyone understands, as der Eibishter can kairis bris sein, euch mit die deiris, was wollen nachkommen. The Eibishter could make a bris even with those that are coming in the future. A human being that's making a bris with someone that's limited, so he has to make a bris with someone that's present. How does he know what's going to be in the future? How does he know if they're shaykh to the bris, they're not shaykh to the bris? But the Eibishter knows what's going to be in the future, so therefore the Eibishter is making this bris with all those that are going to be in the future. Und das, was es steht, der Loschen in dem Dibur von Moshe, Anoichi kairis es a bris azais. Moshe Rabbeinu says that I'm making this bris with you, so it seems like Moshe Rabbeinu is making the bris, not the Eibishter. Is nicht der Pshat, as the krisis bris is given zwischen Yidden mit Moshe. This is not a covenant between Yidden and Moshe. The krisis bris is given zwischen dem Eibishter mit Yidden. Kailolech Moshe. It's between the Eibishter and Yidden, including Moshe, amongst the Yidden. Und das, was Moshe Rabbeinu sagt, der Neuchigkeit ist geheim, meint es, als Moshe hat gemacht, die Achonis zum krisis bris. Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that's preparing this bris between the Yidden and the Eibishter. Wie Shleimar, als geschehen wie krisis bechlal, ist verbunden mit der Po'ula. When you make a covenant, so it's made with a certain action that's done. Und wie Rashi sagt, Eisen mechitze mikan, und mechitze mikan, v'oivrim bentayim, that you put up a certain partition on one side and on the other side, and those making the covenant go through in between together, as it was by the bris ben Absadim. Azay is eich in dem krisis bris, given a po'ula. There was a certain po'ula here by this bris, and not der po'ula had getan Moshe. So the action of what the bris consists of, that's what Moshe Rabbeinu prepared, and therefore he says he's making the action of the bris. But the actual bris is between the Eibishter and the Yidden. Und das ist azay pashet, the fact that the bris is between the Eibishter is so obvious, as Rashi darf afilin et bavaranen, as es nit kein stire. Rashi doesn't even have to clarify that there's no contradiction here. Was früher steht, Hashem lekecha kairis imcha geimer, und danach steht der Neuchi kairis geimer. Rashi doesn't even have to answer that because it's so obvious that it's not a contradiction, as the Rebbe explained over here. Und das ist echt der Tam bepashtus. So the fact that it's the Eibishter making the bris, and it's self-understood that the Eibishter could make a bris with even future generations, so this is the reason, was Rashi darf nicht mazbe sein, wie azoi hat es der Eibishter gesagt, Moshe die Mitzvahs auf alle Deiris. How the Eibishter could give the mitzvahs for Moshe Rabbeinu to command it for the future generations. Und wie azoi der bris ben Absarim mit Avraham Avinu is chal of the später de Gedeiris, and how the Eibishter could make a bris, and the bris is primarily for future generations. Wann beim Ben Chamish Lamikra is abgelegt with Pashtus by even a child. It's simply understood as the Eibishter hat sich nicht kein Akbalis chas v'shalom. The Eibishter has no limitations. Und kann mitzaveh sein, euch ledeire shalach rizah. The Eibishter could command even future generations that are not alive yet. Und the third is das bepschutische Mikra melachatchile kein kashi nit kanal. That's not at all a question, and Rashi didn't address it earlier, and that's not what Rashi is coming to address here. And in fact, Rashi does not give any explanation for it here. Das, was Rashi darf und kommt jeme farisch sein, mit va'af im deire so asidim liyais. Now, so what is it that Rashi is coming to explain with these words? Is nit dem etzem inyan, as the krisis bris is given, euch mit die deire shala achrizeh. It's not this, the very fact that the bris was with future generations, nor dem Eifen, wie der Krisis Bris is given mit die Deiris Asidim Liyais. The Eifen, the way of how this Bris is being made with the future generations. In other words, not how in the sense of how it's possible, but the Eifen, the way the Bris was done with future generations. As the Rebbe will explain here. Von dem Loschen, Veloi itchem levatchem, anoichi kairis es a Bris azais, vesa Allah azais. The pasuk says, not with you alone am I making the bris. I'm making the bris only with those that are here and those that are not here. So if you read the pasuk carefully, what does this mean? It's verstandig, it's understood. As the krisis bris kommt nit nur zum mechayev sein die deiris abayim. It's not only that because the bris is being made today with those alive, it'll also indirectly, and as a result, obligate future generations. That's not what it means. Nor rather, as der Krisis Bris is gemacht geworden direkt mit der Sharenenopai und in demselben Eufen Punkt wie mit der Sheyeshnepai. The Bris is being made directly with those that are not here now and with those that are not here now. It's the very same Bris with both of them directly. That's what the pasuk here is saying. Ki es Sheyeshnepai v'es Sharenenopai. That's the chiddush of the pasuk here. Noch mehr, es ist muchrach von dem, was noch dem, wie der Pasuk sagt, Lo avrecha bevris havai lekecha. It's clear from this that the Pasuk says, Lo avrecha bevris havai lekecha b'negeya di v'zene nitzavim kulchem. Those that are all standing here, those that are alive today. Chazet hariber und the montzei noch einmal, V'lo yitchem levatchem anoichi kairis as habris azayis geimer, ki es ashayeshnei pai. And those that are alive, was l'chayre is da sibirik. The fact that the pasuk repeats again, Asher yeshnepai, that those that are here today are in this bris, it already said, the atta nitzavim, those that are standing here and those that are included in the bris. So why is that? So the fact that Asher yenenupai, that's the addition now. But why does it have to say again, Es Asher yeshnepai? Now this is bichdei zu keilul sein bad goshe dem einenupai zusammen mit dem yeshnepai. It's because the pasuk wants to emphasize that those alive and those that are not alive, the bris is with both of them the same. Und the mit masbe sein, as the krisis bris, by beide sugim is given auf denselben Eufen mamish, that the bris with both of them was in the exact same way. The Rebbe is Rashi meitig euch die Wetter, ves asher einenu poi. So this explains why Rashi quotes from the pasuk also the two words of ves asher und is mefarish ve'af im deiris asidim liyos, also with the future generations. Was mit dem is madgish. With this, Rashi comes and is telling you, Aleph, as the krisis bris is given direct mit die deiris asidim liyos. The bris is being made directly with those future generations. Not indirectly that because the bris was made with the ones alive, so it obligates the future generations. Va'afim, with them as well. Und beis, das ist bei sie gewinn, bedoime mamish, was der Loschen af is mechaber und mashve, wie bei Asher yeshnepai. And it's not only that it was a bris with them directly, but you may think, but nevertheless, the bris is not as strong as those are actually physically present. So the pasuk, when it says, when Rashi clarifies ves asher, that it means va'afim, that they're exactly the same. Va'afim here means that we're comparing. The level of the bris is the same for those that are present physically and those that are not. The fizeh kumtais. So now based on this it comes out, as nit nor darf Rashi nit moisev sein. So it's not only that Rashi, there's no reason for Rashi to come and add and explain. As the nishamis from the deiris haboim zenen dort given. The pshat that was said before, that how could you include the future generations because their nishamis were present. Oder, or the other pshat, as bro kare davua, that the children are like an extension from the father. Nor the pirushim da zenen mushlo. Those pshatim, that it's the nishamis or bro kare davua, those pirushim are negated. That's not the pshat over here. Al pi pshutish mikra, and the pshat of the pasuk. Vem is all learning. If we were to say, as the krisis bris mit sharenene pois mitzad bra kare davua, that the only way you're including the future generations is because they're an extension of their father. So then what that means is, as the krisis bris is given in zwei fanem scheinem, that the krisis bris is in two different ways. The bris mit the yeshne pai is given mit dem gufa. The bris with those present is with these people themselves. On the bris mit einene pai, and the bris with those that are not present is nit given mit dem allein, not als kare davua. Taka, the bris was never made with you yourself, but because you are an extension from the Father, so the bris extends to you as well. But it was never made directly with you. Al derech ze vet euch sein a Chelek, euch me vet lernen, as mit einene poi is the krisis bris given nor mit zeir neshamis. Welche sind given beim krisis bris. Similar also, there would be a difference if you say that the bris with the future generations is only with their neshamis. By yeshne poi hat man keiris bris given mit den neshamis and euch mit die gufim. Those that are present, the bris is with the neshamis and with their gufim. Und bei einene poi hat man keiris bris given bloß mit den neshamis. And the future generations, the bris is only with their neshamis. Aber wie Rashi lernt, the way Rashi learns this pasuk, as from pashtus aksuvim is muchach. From the simple language of the pasuk, it's clear. As das is va'af im deiris asidim liyos. The bris is also with the future generations in the same way. Heißt es doch, as the krisis bris is given mit die deiris allein. With those future generations, it's a direct bris with them alone. Nit als kare davua. And not only because they're an extension of the previous generation. Und in demselben Eufen wie mit Yeshnepai. And the bris with them is in the same way as those that are present, which means das heißt mit Neshamis and Gufim. The bris is with the Neshamis and the Gufim, just like those that are alive. Und befrat al piam bavur berashi le'el, and especially according to what Rashi says, as quoted before, that kach hoyakarsim brisais. This is how the ones that make covenants would make the bris. Oisen mechitzim mikan, they would make a partition on one side, or mechitzim mikan, and on the other side, va'ivrim bein taim, and they go in between. Kameshekosov, as it says, ha'egel asher karsul l'shnayim va'yavru bein psarov. An egel that was cut into two parts, and they went in between the two parts. Was das beweist doch? So what that indicates is, as the alle v'zenen oivrim bein taim, that all those that are passing through in between, werden ein zach. The point of going in between these two parts that were one entity, and now are two parts on the side, and those that are going in between become like one entity. Das heißt, nicht nur man wird ein Sach mit dem, was man macht, the bris, mit dem Eibishten. So the point is that not only are you becoming one with the Eibishter, that's the one that we're making the bris with, nor euch, as die alle, was einen Nichlal im bris, werden ein Sach. The whole concept of a bris is that everybody in this bris is one, becomes one entity. So therefore, all future generations, included in the bris, become one entity. So you can't be mechalik that there's a bris on one level, a bris on another level. The whole point is that they all become one entity. So that's a deeper point. Besides the pirish and the pasik, the pashtus, you understand, va'af, that they're on the same level, the very concept of a bris, and the way the bris is done, that everybody goes together in, and they become one entity, means that anybody included in this bris is the same. Al pi anal as I move on. So based on this, we could also understand. Rashi does not mention the Gerim of future generations. According to Rashi, as the krisis bris mit einenapa is given mit zei gufa, that the Eibishter is making a bris with those that are present, and he's also including and directly in this bris those that are not present, and the Eibishter is unlimited, and the Eibishter could make a bris even with those that are not present now. So therefore, so it's self-understood that when you say that the Deiris HaSidim are included, that includes the Gerim as well. Warum ist es doch Pashit, as die Deiris HaSidim Liyos meint alle Yidden von jeder Deir von die spätere Gedeiris. When it says Deirim HaSidim Liyos, that the Eibishter could make a direct bris with all future generations, that means everybody that's a Yidden in the future generations. Kailol Oich Gerim, including Gerim as well, it's self-understood. If the bris is being made, or you could only make a bris with the ones that are present, and the future generations, you can't make a bris directly with them, so then you need a hesber, how it's possible to include them indirectly in the bris. And that hesber, whether it's the neshamis or brak karadavu, it doesn't apply to Gedim. But here the point is, the Eibishter is making the bris directly with all the future generations. So obviously the Gedim are part of that as well. Mashenken leit the Pirish, as the Krisis bris is mitzad brak karadavu. Was das kann nicht gesagt werden bescheiches zu Gedim. Brak karadavu does not apply to Gedim. Oder mitzadem was the Krisis bris is given mit den neshamis. Was euch that time is nicht massimal pipshute shal mikra by Gedim, kanal siv beis kushya dalit. So according to that hesber, so then we have a problem. Rashi should mention the Gedim. But according to the way we're learning Rashi, va'af im doiris hasidim li, is that it's one bris, so the Gedim are included. Va'adarabah. On the contrary, Rashi kennet der Monen Gedim und der Mid ze eisteilen als asud mifnei atzmai. Rashi cannot mention them that the Gedim are divided and they are in a different category, that they're included in the bris, but as a category for themselves. Warum das ist anders von dem Bris, mit asher yeshnoi, as mit alle is given derselbe Bris, und b'meile is alles eine ein Sach. The whole point that Rashi is trying to say, that the pasuk here, when it says asher yeshnoi, even though it's a repetition, we already know that they're included in the Bris, but it says again asher yeshnoi, and then asher einenu, in order to tell you that it's all really one Bris. And we don't want to divide different categories. So just like the Deiris Asidim Liyos are one with Yeshnoi, so also the Gedim are part of the Deiris of the future Deiris. We don't want to put them as a separate category. Even though earlier in the pasuk, when it talks about all those that are present, and it goes through different categories, it does mention the Gedim as a category from themselves. So that's different. Is das the farvas dorten is a mefaret alles suggen for Yidden? Because over there the pasuk is elaborating and it's mentioning exactly who it is that are there in all the different categories of Yidden. Rasheichem, dort redt sich nicht wegen dem Bris Gufe, nor wegen Nitzavim, als achane lavracha bebris. Over there it's elaborating regarding the preparation for this Bris as they're preparing and everyone is coming to stand and to be present, so who it is that's standing there. But the pasuk redt wegen dem Bris Gufe, when it comes to the actual Bris that the pasuk is describing here, Anoichi Kairis Esa Bris, is nicht shaykh einzuteilen Yidden in besondere Sugim. Here the pasuk does not divide Yidden in different categories. All the details mentioned in the first pasuk are not mentioned here when it comes to the actual Bris. Al pi kol anal vet man euch verstehen, was Rashi is medayek ha'asidim liyos und nit haboim. Why Rashi says that this is future generations, and Rashi uses this term, asidim liyos, unusual term, and not the expression that it says in the Gemara, doirais haboim. Der Teich vom Wort haboim. What is the meaning of the word haboim? That those that are coming. Is nit madgish, as die Sachen haben nit kein Scheiches v'kesher mit der Beziehus b'hoive. That does not emphasize that what's coming has no connection with the ones that are present now. On the contrary, haboim meint, as die Wellen kommen noch behemshech u bescheiches zu dem deure Oive. Haboim means that from what's here now, it's coming in the future to the next generation. So in other words, haboim means that they're following and they're coming after what's here now. That's the translation of haboim. Ubemeile b'shas mizog deures haboim. So when you use this expression, like the Gemara says, deures haboim, chotsch as the mit is men eisen zu sagen, as it's zene ze noch nit gekommen, even though haboim means that they're coming in the future and they're not here yet, is doch gleichzeitig euch a sheiches. But the very word of boim itself also tells you that they're connected to what's here now. Zum friedigen Deur, to the previous generation. They're going to be coming. They wellen kommen als hemshech v'teitzah. They come as a continuation of what's here now. Wellen geboren werden von dem Deur, was ist schon da. They are being born from those that are already alive now. Das heißt, in other words, as od der Deur is machriach dem Deur, was kommt nach him. The generation now is sort of forcing. In other words, they are the cause and they are the ones that are giving birth to the generation that's going to be coming. So if you use that expression, it comes out as mitzadem doir is shein da der doir shel achrizeh. The future generation exists within the generation that's here now, because the ones that are here now, they're the source of why the future generation exists. Mer nit, as in im Zman von dem doir is noch nit da bepoil. They're not actually here yet, they weren't born yet, but in potential, it's the generation that's here now that's the reason why the future generations are here. Al derech ma shekasav Rambam, this is similar to what the Rambam says regarding a different subject. Zeh shekara oisei chachamim ha'olam haba. This that chachamim refer to olam haba as olam haba, lo mipnei she'einu motzei yatachulu. It's not because it's a world that doesn't exist now. El areu motzei v'oimid shenemar chulu. It already exists. It's a world that exists now. V'lo karu olam haba el mipnei she'oisan achayim. That life in Olam Haba, according to the Rambam, that refers to the life of Gan Eden, is a life that you come to after the lifetime here in this world when you're living in a physical body. So therefore, because it comes afterwards, we refer to it as the coming world. But really it exists now. Olam Haba is oich itz motzi v'oimet. Here it exists. Und wird gerufen Olam Haba, nor the far, weil kommt als a mesuve von Chai Olam Hazeh neshama beguf, because it comes after and as a result of the lifetime of a person in his body. So the same thing also with the expression of Deiris Habayim. As much as the word Habayim says that they're only coming in the future and they don't exist now, the word Habayim also means that they're coming from the generation that's here now. And what's here now is the cause of the future that exists. Da Kegin, on the other hand, their loshen asidim liyos, the expression that Rashi chooses, or asidim liyos, those that are going to be, is it's legamri nitfaran. That expression says that they do not exist now, and they're going to be in the future. Nitnar nito bepayil. Not only are they not actually here, nor the etzem etziis darf erst werden liyos. They're going to become. They're going to be then. Das heißt, es kommt nicht als Teilde, Teitza vom Friedigen der. This expression does not say the fact that they're a result coming from the generation that's already here. Und der Rebbe is Rashi medayik b'yoser und sagt nicht Deiris Habayim. So therefore Rashi is very precise by not using the expression of Deiris Habayim. Weil demold, what man gekannt meinen, with this expression of Deiris Habayim, you would think to say, as the krisis bris mit der shareinenu pai is mitzadem v'zeizenen Deiris Habayim. The only way that they, the ones that are not present, could be included in the bris is because they're boim. What does boim mean? Weil sie kommen als teitza v'hemshech von dem heiten gedoer. Is because they are following and coming as a result of those alive today. Like the pshat we said before, because they're an extension of their parents, so therefore the bris is with the parents, but then they're boim. They come from the parents, so the bris is with them as well. That's what the term boim would mean. V'oid, another point, demolt, if Rashi uses the term Deiris Habayim, is nid borer or the nachmer, efsher is men shoylel di geirim. This could actually, it's not clear, or it could actually negate the geirim being included in the bris. In the noch kommende gedeiris. You can't say that they are a generation that's coming from the ones that are alive now. They are going to be coming in the future. They're not coming, they're not a result being born from the generation that's alive now. So Rashi never mentions Geirim. If Rashi would use the term Boim, you would think that with that Lashon he's negating, excluding the Geirim. The Rebbe is Rashi Madgish, Hoasidim Liyos. Rashi uses the expression, the generation that's going to be in the future. Was in them is Mudgish, as they mitzi is Vetnischadish Ba'asid, that the future generations are going to become. They're coming, they begin in the future. Obemele is move on, as the krisis bris hat gemust sein mit die Deiris Hasidim Gufe. So therefore, if the bris is with them, it has to be directly with them. Und nicht zu leave them, weil sie kommen kehemshe v'tetzah from mitzdigen da. And the bris is not with the future generations as a result of the bris that's with the generations that are alive now. Und so zeich barer, as in them, sind euch nichlal geirim. And in this expression, asidim liyas, those that are going to be then, not because they're coming from now, so that includes the Geirim as well. Was euch zei is an asidim liyos. The Geirim as well are going to be in the future part of Klal Yisrael. So that's the precise wording of asidim liyos that Rashi chooses as opposed to the word boim. So this is the conclusion of the pshat and the very seemingly one line, a short few words of Rashi that seems to be so simple. And the Rebbe explains a deeper pshat of what Rashi is saying. And the main adgasha of Rashi, according to the Rebbe's pshat here, is va'afim. Va'afim, to say that the future generations, the bris with them is the same and direct, just like the ones that are alive today. And the diak of Rashi, ha'asidim liyos, that because they are new in the future, we can't say that their bris is just a continuation of the ones that are alive. The bris is with them directly. But now the Rebbe brings a Hira from Rashi, from dem Pirish Rashi, kommt a Reis, a gewaltige Hira, in an Inyan, was man hat gerät, kam upon him. There's an incredible lesson we can take regarding something that we spoke about many times. Es kann treffen, as a Yid soll amal sein, abgefallen bei sich. It could be possible that a Yid is feels lowly by himself. Im Feld Starkheit und Ausführen seiner Avede B'Teiro Mitzvahs. He's missing the strength that he needs to be able to withstand all the tests to fulfill Teiro Mitzvahs. Und befragt beim Reisgehen in the Welt auf Meifet sein, zu Meifet sein, Yades v'chulu. Especially when you have to go out into the world to spread Yiddishkeit in that environment, wie bald as Atem Ama'at Mikol Ha'amim, because Yidden are a minority amongst all the nations of the world. So how does a Yid get strength for this? Is there answer of them? The answer is as follows. Das is als beschas mered wegen Kamos von Yidden. If you look at the numbers of who Yidden are, was Kamos is mugbul und moded und zman mokim. So the numbers of who Yidden are today, in contrast to the billions of Goyim that exist in the world, so here, in this time and in this place that we're living in, Yidden are few, are ma'at. Mitzadem sind Yidden, and as man b'mokim misuyim ma'at mekol ha'amim. Bald, aber as der Ikke bei Yidden is Eichos, Ruchnies, Teiro, Mitzvahs. What's really valuable by Yidden? Not the number simply, but the quality, the Ruchnies, the Teiro, Mitzvahs, is B'shas Yid, verbindt sich mit Eibishten, durch Teiro, Mitzvahs. If you're connected to the source, to the Eibishter, to Teiro, Mitzvahs, was is L'maylam is Manamokim, which is above time and space, is mendemelt verbunden ba'amitis u'bepoil mit alle Yidden shebachol oilam v'shebachol adeiris. So then it's timeless. You connect it to all Yidden of all generations because the Ruchnius of Torah Mitzvahs combines all as one. So it's not just the ones that are physically standing here today in this time and space of the world that are alive now. Und das is Rashi Madgish, is Mudgish in Pirish Rashi, va'af im deiris ha'asidin liyos. When Rashi says af, which means punkt wie der Deur von Nitzavim hayom. It's exactly like the generation that was there present alive, and the bris was made with them. Bei dem Krisis bris von Eibishten, mit Yidden, seinen Yidden shebachol adeiris gestanden demos, alle zusammen, alle seinen ein Metzias. Af, all future generations, not only are they also included in the bris indirectly, all deiris are included as one entity standing together, included in this bris. Von dem ist verstandig, so from this we understand, as b'shas a Yid is verbunden, begolim mit dem Eibishter bebris. If a Yid is connected, if you connect yourself in a revealed way to the Eibishter with this bris, how is that? Durch kiyum ha-Torah mitzvahs b'poil. When it's not only that you're a Yid, but you do the Torah mitzvahs b'poil to reveal this connection, stehen mit ihm alle Yidden shebedeirahu und von alle deiris, alle zusammen sind a koimach shleima. So then the power of who you are is much more powerful than any number of goyim that surround you in the world that you're living in, because you're one with the Yidden of all generations. You're connected to the Eibishter and to the Yidden and to Torah mitzvahs, which is timeless. Und then it comes out, zenen Yidden nit kema'at, euch nit bekamos. So then even if it's the numbers that matters to you, bekamos, even numbers, so then the Yidden are not any more than minority. Adarab, Yidden zenen a riboy otzum euch bekamos. The Yidden are a tremendous number, much more than Goyim, even in numbers. Und sie haben sich nicht was zu schrecken, a füllen it mit Tzadkamos, for a misper Godel bekamos from Goyim. Und Adarab, tipol aleim imosav afachad. If you combine all generations, and the Eibishter combined us as one, so even as far as the numbers are concerned, all Yidden alive at any time are all really together, one entity. So then even in numbers, the Yidden are much more. B'shas is atem nitzavim hayom kulchem. So when Yidden are standing all together, la'achodim ke'echad, united as one, the expression of the Alter Rebbe and Likutei Torah, as Yidden stehen alle zusammen begolim. Yidden stand in a revealed sense all together as one. Is demolt atem nitzavim kayomim va'oimdim. Yidden are standing firm and strong, and v'hainu shezoichim bedin. What this refers to is that the Yidden are meritorious in the judgment of Rosh Hashanah. Das bringt die Ksive, v'chsiv meteve, b'Rosh Hashanah, zu kol echad v'achas mi Yisrael, to each and every Yid, b'teiv, ha'nire, v'ha'nigle. As the Rebbe stresses here that it should be open and revealed good.